On September 15th and 16th, Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping met with Russian President Putin at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Uzbekistan. This was his first visit abroad since January 2020. The meeting between the two is particularly notable because of tensions with the West over Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the CCP's military harassment of Taiwan. The CCP will hold its 20th National Congress on October 16th. Why is Xi Jinping rushing to Central Asia ahead of such a critical meeting? In this episode, we will explore the meeting and the message behind it. Before the 20th National Congress, Xi chose to leave his country. It's an indication that Xi is confident that he could win a third term in office and that he feels comfortable leaving the country before the conference. And perhaps he has an important plan that he is rushing to prepare. However, according to the Chinese custom of watching for omens, Xi's first stop doesn't look too good. On September 14th, Xi flew to Kazakhstan and was greeted by Kazakh president and officials at the airport. Xi Jinping, wearing a mask, stepped off the plane when his foot suddenly slipped while descending the stairs. He immediately reached for the railing to steady himself. Although it was only a minor slip, when associated with the Chinese idiom of a foot in the air, it is not a lucky sign. The Chinese delegation all wore masks, as well as the Kazakh officials on scene, including the honor guard, who also wore medical masks uniformly. Only one contingent didn't wear masks, the military band, which was required to play with the mouth. This should be a result of the CCP's request because the picture needs to be transmitted back to China for such a big event as President Xi's visit abroad. If the domestic population sees no one wearing a mask at an international conference, it means that COVID-19 is no longer the dreadful, contagious disease that the officials have made it out to be. How can the CCP continue its zero-COVID policy, and how can Beijing continue to deceive its people? The Kazakh side received other foreign guests without masks, such as the meeting with world religious leaders held in Kazakhstan from September 13th to 15th, when the Kazakh president met with a number of foreign guests, including Pope Francis of the Roman Catholic Church. On the evening of September 14th, Xi Jinping arrived to attend the Shanghai Cooperation Organization (SCO) summit. The SCO, dominated by China and Russia, is seen as a counterweight to U.S. power in the East Asian alliance. Although before the Russian-Ukrainian war in February 2022, Xi made a high-profile statement when meeting Putin, saying that the cooperation between the two has no limits. But after the war broke out, Western countries launched unprecedented large-scale sanctions, and China's attitude became ambiguous. Chinese officials have never publicly endorsed the need for Russia to wage war, nor have they acknowledged Beijing's assistance. As the war has developed, it seems that Putin is determined to pull Xi into the water. Before Xi's visit on September 7th, Li Jianshu, the number 3 CCP figure, led a delegation to attend the 7th Eastern Economic Forum held in Russia. According to a high-profile report by the Russian news agency, the number 3 man in the Chinese Communist Party said that the US and NATO have directly forced Russia's doorstep. In this case, when Russia took action, China expressed understanding and gave cooperation from different aspects.
在涉及俄罗斯核心利益和一些重大关切问题上，中方也是对俄罗斯也是表示理解和充分的支持。
The Russian news agency even released the live video of Li's speech in the Duma directly. Yet there is a significant difference in the Chinese coverage. In the official Chinese statement released on September 10th about Li's visit to Russia, there was no clear endorsement of the need for a Russian invasion, nor can any of the statements about Ukraine be found. In a press release issued by Xinhua, a state news agency, Li Jianshu was quoted, "China is willing to continue to work with the Russian side to provide firm support to each other on issues involving each other's core interests and major concerns." The past 2 weeks have seen a great deal of change in the Russian-Ukrainian war. The Ukrainian army launched a counteroffensive against Russian forces using weapons provided by the US and European countries. On September 10th, Russian troops were forced to flee the strategic city of Izium after a swift Ukrainian counterattack. The city has been the main bastion of Russian forces in northeastern Ukraine for months. It was Moscow's worst defeat since its retreat from Kyiv in March, and a sign that the war may be entering a new phase.
We know that truth is on our side, though, so it means that we will come. I don't know when, and nobody knows when. But we have plans, so we'll come because it's our land and it's our people. That's why we'll come.
Both China and Russia are at a considerable disadvantage in the current international community. The war has greatly weakened Russia. As the time advanced to September 15th and 16th, the Chinese side has changed its attitude and seems to be reluctant to enter into an alliance with a weakened Russia. During the SCO summit, Putin spoke directly and warmly, while Xi Jinping's rhetoric was much cooler. Putin gave high praise to Russian-Chinese relations, saying that the world is undergoing many changes, but the only thing that remains the same is the friendship and mutual trust between Russia and China, and the Russian-Chinese Comprehensive Strategic Partnership is as solid as a mountain. The foreign policy tandem between Moscow and Beijing plays a key role in ensuring global and regional stability. We jointly advocate the formation of a just, democratic, and multipolar world order based on international law and the central role of the UN.
Предстоит принять участие в заседании Совета глав государств Шанхайской организации
We highly value the balanced position of our Chinese friends when it comes to the Ukraine crisis. We understand your questions and concern about this. During today's meeting, we will of course explain our position. Xi's response was the most measured or understated statement on the strategic relationship between the two countries in years. China and Russia have maintained effective strategic communication. In the face of changes in the world, times, and history, China is willing to work with Russia to demonstrate the responsibility of a major country, play a leading role, and inject positive energy and stability into a turbulent world. I am also very willing to use this meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization to exchange views on bilateral relations and international and regional issues of common concern. Xi avoided specifics such as whether to support Russia's position on the war in Ukraine, as this is the key to testing the limits of the friendship between China and Russia. Xi didn't even mention the Russia-China Comprehensive Strategic Partnership that he used to frequently mention. Xinhua also reported that Putin wished the 20th CCP Congress success, saying he believes that under the leadership of President Xi Jinping, China will continue to achieve new achievements in economic and social development. Xi had no personal praise for Putin. Only on the issue of Taiwan did Xi express satisfaction. For our part, we stand firm on the One China principle. We condemn provocations of the US and its satellites in the Taiwan Strait. Xi responded by expressing his appreciation, saying that China firmly opposes the separatist forces of Taiwan independence and external interference, and no country has the right to be the judge of the Taiwan issue. Xi's attitude towards Russia shows the agenda and calculations he has in mind. For Beijing, now is really not a good time to take risks to aid Russia. The CCP does not want to jump into the same fire pit with Russia. China and Russia share a border of more than 4,000 kilometers and have interdependent economic and trade needs. China has been an important trading partner for Russia, and Chinese oil purchases from Russia have helped offset the decline in Russian exports to Europe. At the same time, Beijing has also been careful to avoid violating Western sanctions. China is likely to continue to confront Washington's partnership to dominate the international order for an extended period of time, offering diplomatic support to Russia while also complying with Western sanctions. Russia signed a new gas supply deal with China worth up to $37.5 billion on the eve of its invasion of Ukraine, and Russia has been sending gas to China through a 3,000-kilometer pipeline since the end of 2019. Trade between the two countries has increased by a quarter this year compared to 2021. On September 7th, Putin said at the Eastern Economic Forum that Gazprom and the Chinese side decided to settle natural gas costs in rubles and yuan at a ratio of 50-50. The growth of mutual trade exchanges is undoubtedly facilitated by the consistent stance of our three countries to expand the use of national currencies in commercial settlements. Today, Mr. Xi Jinping and I stated with satisfaction that in the first quarter of this year, the share of settlements in national currencies in Russia's trade with China increased to 27.5%. In this context, it would be important, wherever possible, to switch to national payment platforms such as the Russian bank's financial messaging system and the Chinese cross-border payment system. China actively supports the wider use of settlements in national currencies and will also welcome an even greater number of Russian and Mongolian enterprises that are part of the yuan payment circuit. The French television station BMF reported citing the Nikkei News as saying that the CCP is reselling Russian gas to Europe for a profit. The report said a trader in Shanghai told the Nikkei News that the profit margins on these resales are quite high and could be as high as US $100 million per deal. The CCP is buying Russian oil and gas in large quantities and has begun settling the cost of gas in RMB and rubles. This news has also been verified by the official Chinese media. So, what is the ultimate purpose of settling in RMB? On the one hand, it's a result of the current needs of both sides. Since Russia has been under Western sanctions, Moscow has accelerated its push to reduce its reliance on the dollar and euro in its banking system and trade. The CCP's foreign exchange reserves are at a recent record low, and buying Russian gas without settling in euros or dollars is certainly what the CCP wants. On the other hand, it's possible that the CCP is preparing for a war in the Taiwan Strait. That is, the visit of Li Jianshu, the number 3 figure of the CCP, to Russia and the meeting of party leader Xi Jinping and Putin, all of these contain some of such preparations, probably to prepare for the layout of a war in the Taiwan Strait after the 20th National Congress and to prepare for a showdown with the US and other Western countries. Therefore, the CCP wants to expand the domestic economic internal circulation into Russia. The expansion of the internal circulation from China to Russia, coupled with Iran and North Korea, this state of having to decouple from the world will only accelerate the economic downturn of this country. The sanctions imposed on Russia by the US and its allies have shown the CCP that there will be at least extremely strong economic sanctions from democratic countries such as the US in the event of a war in the Taiwan Strait. Beijing doesn't want to disassociate itself from the West, since money from the West is a major economic pillar for the CCP. However, Xi and his think tank likely believe that the so-called recovery of Taiwan will consolidate his position within the party and maintain the CCP's power and credibility with the public, thereby strengthening the reign. Economic issues can take a back seat to this goal in the short term. Tensions in the Taiwan Strait continue to escalate. On September 14th, the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee overwhelmingly passed the Taiwan Policy Act of 2022. This is the most comprehensive adjustment of U.S. policy toward Taiwan since the U.S. cut off diplomatic relations with Taiwan in 1979, and the Taiwan Relations Act came into effect. Next, the Senate will vote on the final version of the bill. There is currently no supporting bill in the House of Representatives. If the bill passes both houses of Congress, President Biden will decide whether to sign it into law. The CCP responded strongly to this.
If the bill continues to be reviewed, advanced, or even passed into law, it will greatly shake the political foundation of Sino-US relations and will have extremely serious consequences for Sino-US relations and peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. China will take all necessary measures to resolutely defend national sovereignty and territorial integrity, depending on the progress and final outcome of the case.
Xi Jinping's visit should also aim to stabilize relations with Central Asia and some neighboring countries, as well as to help Russia stabilize the situation in Central Asia. Members of the SCO include China, Russia, India, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Iran also recently signed a memorandum of formal membership. And now, the post-Soviet Central Asian states fear that Russia may encroach on their lands as well. Kazakhstan in particular is a neighbor of Russia and has a large Russian-speaking population. It has already provided humanitarian aid to Ukraine. The CCP's refusal to condemn Russia has also caused unease in Central Asian countries. That could hamper China's efforts to build stronger ties with its Central Asian neighbors, where Beijing has invested for more than 2 decades. One country that plays a unique role in the SCO is India, which joined the organization in 2017. India has not joined the Western sanctions against Russia and in recent months has significantly increased its purchases of Russian oil, coal, and fertilizers. India's Prime Minister Modi's attitude towards Putin is not as self-serving and calculating as that of the CCP. During his meeting with Putin on the sidelines of the summit, Modi directly urged Putin to end the war in Ukraine and return to the path of dialogue. He said, "I know that today's times are not times of war. We have discussed this with you many times on the phone, and it's democracy, diplomacy, and dialogue that will bring the whole world together. Today, the biggest concerns facing the world, especially developing countries, are food security, fuel security, and fertilizers. We have to find solutions to these problems, and you have to consider it." I know your stance on the conflict in Ukraine. I know about the concerns that you voice constantly. We will do everything for it to stop as soon as possible. Unfortunately, the leadership of the opposing side, Ukraine, has stated that they refuse to hold talks and that they want to reach their goals militarily, or, as they say, on the battlefield. It's true that it would be more beneficial not to start a war or to end it early, both for Ukraine and for Russia's national interests and Putin's own dominance. But the CCP might not think so. Its expectation might be that Russia would win the war at the enormous cost of weakening its national power. In this way, Russia will lose its status as a big brother to the CCP and also inevitably become deeply dependent on the CCP. Putin's tragedy is that in order to realize his dream, he started a war of aggression and ended up having to rely on the CCP, a red party that runs almost counter to the world's universal values. We also regret that after paying a huge amount of effort to abandon socialism and communism, the Russian people have not been cherished by some Western politicians for a long time. In the end, this resulted in an alliance between Russia and the CCP. Xi Jinping's tragedy is that when he had the power, he didn't choose political reform, a deeper liberalization of the economy and markets. It would have allowed the country, which has a very deep and excellent traditional culture, to really go on the road to recovery. He foolishly thought that this red party had given him power, so he clung to the idea of preserving the party. As a result, his government will have to resort to a closed-door approach to preserve the status of the red party. It also seems that Xi Jinping is unwilling to give up the idea of unifying Taiwan by force, which would be a fatal step toward the global expansion of communist totalitarianism. If he does take that step, it is foreseeable that he will not just have one foot in the air, but will have completely fallen flat on his face.